don't expand our imagination.
Justification for being what you are.
I'm Stephanie Condon with CBSNews.com, and I'm here with John Taylor, President and CEO of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, to talk about the latest reports about Standard & Poor's, the powerful credit ratings agency. John, thank you for joining us.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, Stephanie.
Now, the New York Times reports today that the Justice Department is investigating whether S&P improperly rated mortgage-backed securities ahead of the financial crisis. And this, of course, comes in the wake of S&P's downgrade of U.S. debt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, reports say...
That'll teach them.
Exactly. Well, that's actually what I wanted to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, reports say it's not because of
retaliation.
The downgrade.
Yeah.
And you know, but nevertheless, it does come after this. Does this make it? You know, is there a chance that this is some sort of retribution, or does it make it harder for the Justice Department to do its job in this context?
You know, I don't know. It's a different pay grade, and I'm not a fly on the wall in justice, but it is interesting that this whole justice investigation gets announced around the time, shortly after they've downgraded the U.S. And the other two rating agencies, Fitch and Moody's, of course, keep the U.S. at a AAA rating. So, right. And I haven't heard anything about they being investigated. But I really think they all could be. I don't want the story to be lost in, like, is this retribution, as opposed to, is this merited, is it warranted? And, you know, frankly, as somebody who has an organization that's filed complaints with the SEC and with HUD about the role of the rating agencies in slapping these AAA ratings on what was a lot of junk securities, junk loans, it's high time that Justice and others stepped up to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at the flip side of the coin in terms of motivation, mm-hmm. Some say that S&P may have been motivated to downgrade U.S. debt as a sort of compensation for its failures ahead of the financial crisis. What's your take on that?
As a compensation for its own failures?
To sort of bolster its reputation.
Oh. It's a dangerous gambit if that's what they were doing, for the very reason we just talked about, is the, you know, taking off the United States government and stepping out of your group of rating agencies to do this sort of thing. I think S&P, I mean, they did a paper in '08 themselves where they looked back at a lot of the mortgages they had securitized and questioned and had to re-rate them and questioned whether their system was accurate. I met with them actually in '07, and I was very concerned about a lot of the mortgages that they were rating, securities that were being slapped with a AAA rating, and I was trying to understand from them. I went to their building in Wall Street and met with the executives there and had a lot of questions, and I was shocked to learn that they don't do due diligence. I mean, they actually said that because I theorized that they had this entire floor in their S&P building made up of these, you know, geeky actuarial types who are sitting there at computers just analyzing these mortgages and loans from soup to nuts to come out with what the rating was. And instead, you know, they showed me this form that had a checklist on it for the banks to fill out that would say, you know, is this mortgage low documentation? Is it an adjustable rate? Does it have a piggyback loan on it? Does it have a balloon payment? That all the toxic conditions, which were acceptable, you just check the box. And then you mix those with a lot of other securities, and then if you weren't quite pleased with your rating, you could always enhance the rating by buying insurance or whatever. But the bottom line was, the bank who was bringing these packages of loans to you, the rating agencies, to S&P, I was paying your salary.
Right.
So the way it worked was like, now rate these loans, but I need a good rating on this, and if you can't give me what I need, I'm going over to Fitch or Moody's. I mean, the conflict of interest, the inherent conflict of interest, where they were paying you to get a rating, just really worked against the interests of consumers and investors.
And so, do you think that last year's rewrite of the financial rules with the Dodd-Frank Act sufficiently addressed that at all?
No, because, I mean, there's a number of things in there that have to do with more transparency and reporting and looking at how they rate these loans and so on. But the inherent conflict of interest, which is the investment banks paying their salary, is still in place. There needed to be a system set up where the rating agencies couldn't feel like, if I don't respond the way this investment bank wants me to respond in terms of the rating with all these mortgages, that I'm going to be penalized by them. There needed to be a way of perhaps putting all these investors put their money into a pool, and there's just more of an arm's length transaction between the payment and the rating, and that wasn't accomplished in Dodd-Frank. Some good things were, and they haven't been implemented yet. I mean, it's up to the SEC to start creating the mechanism and the even though the law went into effect on July 21st, the mechanisms for implementing what was in Dodd-Frank to clean up this industry and make it more transparent, that remains to be done.
One of the things they are considering is creating a board, possibly, that would be in charge of delegating which agencies rate which firms, and that's supposed to erase some of the conflict of interest. Do you think there's potential there to, first of all, do you think it would happen that the SEC would adopt some of those rules, and do you think it would be effective? I
don't know. I mean, I've filed complaints with the SEC to try to clean up these things, and they've been pretty unresponsive, and you hear a lot of, we're understaffed, we're overworked, so unless that agency is going to grow in capacity, the concept of having one investment bank being assigned to one rating agency. So in other words, if they don't like that rating, they can't jump to another, or they can't say, no, I don't want to work with them, I'd rather work with this. I think that's a good idea on its face. More than anything, I think what we need to do is have some sort of independent third-party review of, and there's some of that in Dodd-Frank, but to go into these agencies and see if indeed the due diligence is being done to ensure that the ratings really match the risk that exists in these securities and these mortgages.
All right. Well, thanks very much for joining us, Mr. Taylor.
Sure.
And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Washington Unplugged.
If we don't expand our imagination,
Justification for being what you are.